The lobby fell quiet the moment she stepped. Inside. Not the respectful kind of quiet, the kind that hesitates, the kind that pauses just long enough for people to decide who you are allowed to be. The chandelier above the marble floor glowed warm and expensive. Gold veins ran through white stone like confidence that had never been questioned. Guests moved smoothly, effortlessly rolling luggage, checking phones, laughing softly. It was the kind of place where everything was designed to make you feel small unless you belonged. She noticed it immediately. Not a single staff member looked at her. No greeting. No smile. No welcome, ma'am. Just eyes that slid past her and then circled back, slower this time. Assessing. The woman stood still for a moment, her hand resting lightly on the handle of her carry-on. She wore a charcoal coat, tailored but understated. No flashy jewelry. No logo-heavy bag. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture straight, calm, unhurried. She had learned long ago that confidence didn't need to announce itself. Still, the silence pressed in. At the reception desk, 2 clerks whispered to each other. One glanced at her, then quickly looked away, as if eye contact itself might be a mistake. A bellhop shifted his weight, pretending to adjust his jacket while watching her from the corner of his eye. She took a breath. Here we go again. She thought not with anger, not even surprise, but with a tired familiarity. She walked toward the front desk. "Good evening," she said, her voice even, warm. "I have a reservation." The clerk blinked, looked down at the computer, looked back up at her. Face then down again, this time longer. "What name?" he asked. She gave it. The clerk typed, paused, his eyebrows pulled together. He said, frowning slightly. "I don't see it." She leaned forward just a little, still calm. "Could you check again? It should be under—" "I already did," he interrupted, too quickly. "We're pretty full tonight." Behind her, a white couple approached the adjacent desk. Before they could even speak, the second clerk smiled broadly. "Welcome to the Grand Aurelius," she said brightly. "Checking in?" The couple nodded. Their reservation was found instantly. The woman didn't turn around. She didn't sigh. She didn't argue. She simply waited. The clerk cleared his throat. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" The question landed like a slap, not on skin, but on dignity. She met his eyes now. Really met them. "Yes," she said, "I'm sure." Something in her gaze made him shift uncomfortably. He glanced toward the far end of the lobby, where the hotel manager stood speaking to a guest. The manager was a tall man in a crisp suit. His smile practiced, his voice confident, someone used to being obeyed. The clerk leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe you booked through a third-party site?" "Sometimes I book directly," she said. 2 weeks ago." The clerk hesitated, then straightened. "I'll get my manager." She nodded once. As the clerk walked away, she felt it, the familiar heat in her chest. Not rage, not humiliation, something colder. She looked around the lobby. Again, at the artwork on the walls, at the polished brass railings, at the staff who now pretended. Very hard not to see her. She knew this hotel, not as a guest. As a vision. As a name on documents most people never read. The manager approached, his smile already fading as his eyes landed on her. "Yes?" he said. Not unkindly, not kindly either. Neutral in the way authority often is when it assumes it has the upper hand. "There seems to be a problem." She turned to face him fully. "Apparently," she said, "my reservation doesn't exist." He looked. Her up and down, quick, efficient, dismissive. A glance so practiced it might as well have been policy. "What's the name?" he asked. She told him. He didn't look at the screen. Didn't ask the clerk to recheck. Instead, he sighed. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable, "this happens sometimes." "But if you don't have a confirmation—" "I do," she said, pulling her phone from her pocket. She unlocked it, tapped twice, and held it out. He didn't take it. He waved a hand. "We don't need to do that right now." The words were polite. The meaning was not. A few guests nearby had started to notice. A woman in heels slowed her walk. A man near the bar leaned back on his stool, watching openly now. The manager crossed his arms. This hotel has standards, he said. If there's been a mistake, I'm sure we can help you find accommodations somewhere more appropriate. There. It was the real slap, not loud, not dramatic, but sharp enough to sting long after the moment passed. She felt it in her throat first. Then behind her eyes, breathe, she told herself. She had faced boardrooms that questioned her authority without saying it, investors who smiled while waiting for her to fail. Reporters who asked if she was really the decision-maker. This was smaller than all of that, and somehow it hurt more. I'm not asking for special treatment, she said quietly. I'm asking you to honor a reservation. The manager's jaw tightened. Ma'am, he said, his tone firm now. I'm going to need you to step aside. You're holding up the line. She glanced behind her. There was no line. Just eyes. Watching. Measuring. Judging whether she would raise her voice. Whether she would prove whatever they already believed about her. She didn't. She stepped aside, not because she had to, because she chose to. As she moved toward a leather chair near the wall, she felt the weight of every look follow her. The clerk immediately began helping the next guest, efficient, cheerful, polite. If she had vanished. She sat down slowly, placing her bag at her feet. Her hands rested in her lap, perfectly still. Inside, her thoughts churned. This is how it always starts. She thought. Not with hatred. With assumptions. She remembered her grandmother's voice. Years ago, baby, she used to say, they don't need to yell to remind you where they think you belong. The manager walked away without another glance. Minutes passed. No. One came back. The clock above the concierge desk ticked softly. Somewhere a glass clinked. Laughter floated in from the bar. She checked her phone, not for the reservation, but for the time. 9 minutes had passed since she entered the lobby. She looked up again, and that's when she noticed something new. At the far end of the lobby, near the wall of framed photographs showcasing the hotel's history, a young employee stood frozen in place. A woman in her early 20s wearing the same uniform as the others, but her eyes were wide, fixed on the woman in the chair. Their gazes met. The young employee swallowed hard. Then she looked at the photos, then back at her. Slowly, she walked toward the manager. The woman in the chair watched, her expression unchanged. She didn't know yet what the employee had recognized, but she felt it. The air had shifted, something had been set in motion, and for the first time since she walked. In the silence in the lobby didn't feel like dismissal anymore. It felt like anticipation. The manager laughed softly as the young employee whispered in his ear. Not a cruel laugh, not loud. The kind of laugh men use when they believe concern is unnecessary. He nodded once, dismissively, and the employee stepped back, her face tight with uncertainty. She lingered for half a second longer than she should have, glancing again toward the woman seated by the wall. The woman noticed. She's seen something, she thought, or she knows something, but the manager didn't come over. Instead, he raised his voice just enough for the lobby to hear. All right, folks, he said, clapping his hands once. Let's keep things moving. A subtle command, a public one. The woman remained seated, composed, but she could feel the atmosphere harden around her. The glances were no longer curious, they were impatient now, as if she were the inconvenience, as if her presence had disrupted the smooth rhythm of a place not built to include her. A concierge approached her slowly, a man with salt and pepper hair and a rehearsed expression of sympathy. Ma'am, he said quietly, leaning down just enough to appear helpful, perhaps it would be best if we discussed this somewhere else. Where? She asked. He gestured toward a small side hallway near the restrooms, out of sight. Away from the guests. She looked at him for a long moment. No, she said simply, we can talk here. The concierge straightened, clearly uncomfortable. I'm just trying to help. I know, she replied. And she meant it, but I'm not the one causing a disruption. The man opened his mouth to respond, but the manager cut in from across the lobby. Sir, the manager said sharply, I'll handle this. He walked over, his steps measured, his smile gone. Ma'am, he said, lowering his voice again, we've already explained the situation. You've explained your assumption, she said. His eyes flicked briefly to the guests watching them now. A couple near the elevator had stopped pretending not to listen. Someone at the bar had turned fully in their seat. "This isn't the place for a debate," he said. "If you don't have proof of your reservation, there's nothing more we can do." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim leather folder. "I do," she said. She opened it carefully and slid a printed confirmation across the marble counter. The manager glanced down, just a glance, barely a second, then he pushed it back toward her with one finger. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. "Anyone can print something like this." The words landed heavier than the paper. Her jaw tightened, not visibly, but internally. She felt the familiar pull between defending herself and refusing to perform. "You didn't read it," she said. "I don't need to," he replied. Behind him, the clerk shifted uncomfortably. The young employee stood rigid, hands clasped in front of her, eyes darting between the two of them. The manager crossed his arms again. "This hotel attracts a certain clientele," he said. "We have to be careful." "Careful of what?" she asked. He hesitated. Just long enough. "Of misunderstandings," he finished. She nodded slowly. "There it is, not an insult, not a slur, just a sentence that told her exactly how he saw her." A guest nearby cleared her throat. "Excuse me," the woman said hesitantly. "She doesn't seem unreasonable." The manager turned sharply. "Ma'am, please," he said, his smile snapping back into place. "We're handling it." The woman fell silent. The manager looked back at the seated woman. "I'm going to ask you one last time," he said. "Do you have official identification that matches a reservation in our system?" "Yes," she said. "Then show it." She reached into her coat and removed her ID. She placed it on the counter. The manager picked it up. Actually picked it up this time. He looked at the name, his brow furrowed. He looked again. For a moment, just a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then he handed it back. "This doesn't change anything," he said. The lie was smooth, practiced. "What about my behavior?" she asked quietly. "Suggests I don't belong here?" He stiffened. "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." His jaw clenched. "I'm saying this conversation is over." He turned to the concierge. "Call corporate support. We may have a security issue." The word security rippled through the lobby like a dropped glass. Her chest tightened. But she didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't stand. She stayed exactly where she was. "On what grounds?" she asked. "Refusal to cooperate." He said. The young employee stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Sir?" she said softly. I think he shot her a look so sharp she froze mid-sentence. "I didn't ask you," he said. The woman in the chair watched it all with a strange calm. The way power traveled, the way it silenced some and emboldened others. She folded her hands again. "Do what you need to do," she said. The manager blinked. That wasn't the response he expected. Usually by now people were defensive, emotional, apologetic, angry. This, he turned away, pulling out his phone. As he walked toward the back office, his voice carried. "Yes," he said into the phone. "We have a guest refusing to leave." "No, nothing physical." "Yes, she's difficult." The word burned. The young employee stood rooted to the spot. Her face had gone pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. As she passed by the seated woman, the woman looked up at her. "Don't be," she said gently. Minutes passed again. The lobby felt smaller now, tighter, as if the walls were leaning in to hear the outcome. The manager returned, phone still in hand. "Corporate agrees," he said loudly. "Without confirmation in the system, we cannot accommodate you." He paused. "But," he added, "we are willing to offer a voucher for another hotel nearby." A polite exile. The woman smiled faintly. "No," she said. The smile faded from his face. "I'm not going anywhere," she continued. "This is my hotel?" The words hung in the air. A couple of guests laughed awkwardly, assuming it was a joke. The manager did not laugh. He stared at her. "What did you say?" he asked. She met his eyes. "I said," she repeated calmly, "this is my hotel." The lobby went silent again, but this time it wasn't dismissive. It was stunned. The manager scoffed. "That's enough," he said. "I'm calling the..." Young employee suddenly spoke again, louder this time. Sir, she said, her voice shaking, the name, it's on the wall. The manager turned sharply. What? She pointed to the framed photographs. Founder series, she said. The newest one? Slowly, very slowly, the manager turned, his head toward the wall. The woman in the chair watched him rise to his feet, and for the first time since she arrived, she allowed herself one quiet thought. Now he's going to see. The manager stood frozen, his back to her, his eyes locked on the wall of framed photographs. The lobby didn't move. No footsteps. No voices. No clinking glasses. Just the low hum of the building itself, as if the hotel were holding its breath. The woman watched him carefully. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. She let the silence do what it was always meant to do, tell the truth. On the wall, the photographs were arranged in a perfect line, black frames, gold plaques beneath each. 1. A timeline of success, of legacy, of ownership. Founders. Former CEOs. CHAIRPERSONS. The manager took a step closer, then another. His shoulders stiffened as he read the plaque under the final photograph. The newest one, her photograph taken 3 years ago, professional, neutral, powerful. In its restraint, the same pulled-back hair, the same calm gaze, the same name now sitting in his hand only minutes earlier. The color drained from his face. Around them, murmurs began to ripple through the lobby. That's her, someone whispered. Oh, my God. The manager's mouth opened slightly, closed again. He swallowed slowly, as if afraid the movement itself might confirm something irreversible. He turned around. Their eyes met. She saw it all cross his face in quick succession: confusion, disbelief, calculation, and finally something close to fear. Not fear of her, fear of what he had done. That's not, he started. She raised a hand, not sharply, not defensively, just enough to stop him. Before you speak, she said, her voice steady, I'd like you to take a moment. The lobby leaned in. He blinked. Ma'am, if this is some kind of misunderstanding, I said. She repeated softly. Before you speak. The authority in her tone wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was absolute. He closed his mouth. She stood now, rising slowly from the chair. When she did, the room seemed to recalibrate around her. She wasn't tall, but she didn't need to be. She walked toward the wall, toward her photograph. Each step echoed. I want you to remember, she said, still not looking at him exactly, how you spoke to me. She stopped beside the frame, turned to face the lobby. I want you to remember how quickly you decided I didn't belong here, how easily you dismissed proof, how comfortable you were suggesting I leave. Her eyes flicked to the guests, then back to him. And I want you to remember that you did all of that before you knew who I was. His lips trembled. I didn't. She looked at him again. This time he couldn't finish the sentence, because now the weight of it had settled. Not just what he said, but why he said it. She took a breath. For a moment, her mind drifted uninvited back to other lobbies, other desks, other versions of this same conversation. The first bank that questioned her creditworthiness despite her financials, the conference where she was mistaken for support staff, the board meeting where her ideas were praised only after someone else repeated them. She had learned to swallow those moments, to compartmentalize, to survive them. But this was different. This was home turf. Her voice softened, just slightly. When I was a child, she said, my mother used to bring me to hotels like this. She cleaned rooms, late nights, early mornings. She taught me how to fold sheets so tight you could bounce a coin off them. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. She told me, the woman continued, that these places weren't built for people who looked like us, but that didn't mean we didn't belong in them. She turned back to the manager. I worked my entire life to change that. His eyes dropped to the floor. The young employee stood near the desk, her hands shaking, her eyes glossy. She looked between them as if watching history rewrite itself in real time. The woman stepped away from the wall and walked back to the center of the lobby. Now, she said, I want to ask you a question. The manager looked up, desperate. Yes, of course. Would you have treated me the same way? she asked. If my skin were lighter? The question wasn't accusatory. It was surgical. He opened his mouth. No. Answer came out. That was answer enough. She nodded slowly, around them. The silence had changed again. It wasn't anticipation now. It was reckoning. She felt it too, the ache beneath her ribs. The exhaustion she never let herself acknowledge. The quiet grief of always having to prove what others were allowed to assume. She turned her gaze to the staff. To everyone here, she said, I want you to understand something. This moment isn't about revenge, it's about clarity. She looked at the concierge, the clerks, the bellhop who still hadn't spoken to her. This is how bias works, she continued. Not in explosions, in policies, in tone. In who gets believed, her eyes returned to the manager, and in who gets protected. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, he said. I truly am. She studied him. The apology was real, and still it wasn't enough. Sorry doesn't undo what happened, she said. And it doesn't answer the larger question. She paused, which is how many times this has happened before. The manager stiffened. What do you mean? He asked. She smiled sadly. I mean, she said, I'm not the first guest you've treated this way. I'm just the first one whose name you recognized too late. A murmur of agreement moved through the room. The young employee nodded faintly. Tears spilling over now, the woman felt a tightening in her chest. Not anger, something heavier. Responsibility. Because now that the truth was visible, she couldn't pretend not to see it either. She reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. The manager watched her hand as if it were a ticking clock. I'm going to ask you to do something, she said. And how you respond will matter. Yes, he said quickly. Anything. She looked him in the eye. I want a full report, she said. Guest complaints, staff turnover, incident logs, everything. His breathing quickened. Tonight, she added. He hesitated. Just for a second. She noticed. The hesitation told her everything she needed to know. Of course, he said finally. She nodded. Good, she said. Because this hotel doesn't have a reservation problem. She glanced around the lobby one more time. It has a culture problem. The words settled like dust after a collapse. She took a step back, reclaiming space. Inside, she felt the old, familiar weight again, but this time she didn't carry it alone. The room was carrying it with her. The manager cleared his throat. May I escort you to your suite? She considered the question, then she shook her head. No, she said. Not yet. He froze. She met his eyes one last time. We're just getting started. The manager didn't move for a moment. He stood there as if the floor itself had shifted beneath him, as if the authority he had worn so comfortably minutes ago no longer fit the same way. Of course, he said finally, forcing a nod. Take all the time you need, he gestured toward the elevators. Your suite will be ready whenever you... She didn't follow his hand instead. She turned and looked at the front desk again. At the clerks, at the concierge, at the young employee who had spoken up first. Please, she said calmly, continue with your work. The words sounded polite, but they carried weight. The staff hesitated, unsure whose authority applied now. The manager cleared his throat and nodded sharply. You heard her, he said slowly, awkwardly. The lobby returned to motion. Guests resumed checking in. A bellhop rolled a suitcase toward the elevators. The bar filled again with low conversation, normalcy, carefully reconstructed, but something fundamental had changed. The woman felt it in the air, the tension that hadn't left, only rearranged itself. She walked to a quiet seating area near the windows overlooking the city. Night had settled outside, light stretching into the distance like veins of gold. She sat again, crossing her legs, folding her hands. From here, she could see everything, and everyone could still see her. The manager retreated toward the back office. As soon as the door closed behind him, voices rose inside muffled. Urgent. Phones came out. Not just his. The concierge checked his messages. One clerk leaned toward the other, whispering too quickly. A supervisor appeared from the hallway, eyes wide, scanning the lobby until they landed on her. The system had noticed, and the system was reacting. She had expected this. Institutions didn't like surprises. They liked order. They liked hierarchy. And above all, they liked problems that could be managed quietly. A few minutes later, the supervisor approached her, smile tight, posture rigid. "Miss Carter," he said, pronouncing her name carefully. "Now, we're honored to have you with us." She inclined her head slightly. "Thank you. If there's anything at all you need," he continued, "anything we can do to make this right, I need transparency," she said. He blinked. "Of course. I need to understand," she continued, "why a confirmed reservation was treated as non-existent, why proof was dismissed, why the word security was introduced." The supervisor's smile faltered. "I'm sure there was a misunderstanding." She looked at him steadily. "That's what systems say," she replied, "when patterns are inconvenient." His shoulders stiffened. "I'll make sure corporate is looped in," he said quickly. "I already am corporate," she said. The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. The supervisor swallowed. "Right, of course." He stepped back, nodding again, retreating the way people do when they realize they've stepped into something larger than themselves. She watched him go. This is the moment, she thought. The moment where they decide whether to learn or protect themselves. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A message. "Board liaison. Are you at Aurelia Central?" She typed back calmly. Her. "Yes." Three dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Board liaison. We're seeing internal alerts. Are you safe?" She looked up at the lobby, at the staff who now avoided her eyes, at the manager's office door still closed. Her. "I'm fine." Another pause. "Board liaison. Do you want us to intervene?" She considered the question. This was the pivot point. If she said yes, the machinery would roll in. Lawyers, HR protocols, damage control, statements would be drafted. People would be reassigned. Apologies would be issued in carefully measured language, and nothing would really change. She typed slowly. Her. "Not yet." She slipped the phone back into her coat, across the lobby. The young employee stood behind the desk, her hands trembling as she handed a key card to a guest. Their eyes met again. Briefly, the employee looked scared, not of the woman, of what might happen next. The woman held her gaze, offering a small, reassuring nod. "You did the right thing," the nod said. The manager's office door finally opened. He stepped out, flanked by another man in a suit, older, sharper, eyes already calculating. "Regional director, maybe?" Someone used to smoothing things over. They walked toward her together. "Miss Carter," the older man said, extending a hand. "I'm Daniel Rhodes, Regional Operations." She stood and shook his hand. "Nice to meet you," she said. "First," he continued, "I want to apologize for your experience tonight." She waited. "And second," he added, "I want to assure you that we take matters like this very seriously." She smiled faintly. "I'm sure you do." The manager stood slightly behind him now, quiet, contained. "We'd like to invite you to a private lounge," Daniel said. "Somewhere more comfortable, where we can talk openly." There it was. The pull toward privacy, toward containment. "No," she said gently. "Here is fine." Daniel hesitated. "This isn't really the place." "It is," she replied. "This is where it happened." A few nearby guests pretended not to listen again. Pretended poorly. Daniel nodded slowly. "Very well," he gestured to the manager. "Go ahead." The manager cleared his throat. "I want to take full responsibility," he said. "I acted based on incomplete information." She tilted her head. "Which information was missing?" He hesitated. Daniel jumped in smoothly. "Context," he said. "High occupancy, pressure." "Misunderstandings." She raised a hand. "Let him answer," she said. The manager's face flushed. I didn't recognize the name," he admitted. "She waited. And?" she asked. He looked down. "And I made assumptions." The word echoed. "Assumptions." She nodded once. "Thank you for saying it out loud." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "We'll be conducting an internal review," he said. "Policies will be revisited." She looked at him. "Policies are only as good as the people enforcing them." He didn't argue. "What happens," she asked, "when the person enforcing them is protected by the system?" Daniel's mouth opened. "Closed. That," she continued, "is what I'm interested in." Silence stretched again. Then, unexpectedly, a guest spoke. a middle-aged man in a tailored coat, standing near the elevators. "I've stayed here for years," he said, "and I've seen this kind of thing before." The manager looked up sharply. The man continued, voice steady. "Different faces. Same tone, same outcome?" A woman near the bar nodded. "Me too." Another voice joined in. They questioned. "My ID last year?" The system was cracking. Daniel raised his hands. "We appreciate the feedback," he said quickly. "We'll take all of this under advisement." The woman watched him carefully. Here it comes, she thought. The pivot, the attempt to absorb the shock without changing shape. Daniel turned back to her. "Given everything," he said, "perhaps it would be best if we pause further discussion until tomorrow." Cooler heads, formal channels, she smiled. "That's the system talking again," she said softly. His expression tightened. "I'm just trying to be practical." "I know," she replied. "And I'm trying to be honest." She took a step forward. "Tonight," she said, "I was treated like a problem to be managed. Tomorrow this will be framed as a misunderstanding to be resolved." She looked around the lobby. "But for the people who watch this," she continued, "and for the people it's happened to before, this isn't abstract." Daniel glanced around uneasily. "What are you suggesting?" She met his eyes. "I'm suggesting," she said, "that if this system protects behavior like this, then the system itself needs to be examined." The manager's breathing quickened. Daniel's voice lowered. "That kind of scrutiny has consequences." "Yes," she said. "It does." Her phone vibrated again. A message. This one from the board chair. Board chair. "We need to talk." Now she looked at the screen, then at Daniel. Then at the manager. The system had fully mobilized. Now. Not to listen. To contain. She slipped the phone back into her coat. "I'll stay," she said, "right here." Daniel frowned. "Miss Carter." "I'm not leaving," she repeated. "And I'm not doing this behind closed doors." The manager's composure finally cracked. "What do you want?" he blurted out. The lobby went still again. She turned to him. And for the first time since she arrived, her voice carried something new. Not anger, resolve. "I want the truth," she said. "And I want to see what happens when the system can't hide it." The words settled heavily. Somewhere deep in the hotel, an elevator chimed. And in that quiet, everyone seemed to realize the same thing at once. This wasn't a complaint anymore. It was a reckoning. The board chair's call went unanswered. Not because she couldn't pick up, because she chose not to. She stood in the center of the lobby, her phone resting silently in her palm, and for the first time that evening she felt the full weight of what was about to happen. Not to her, but to them. The manager kept glancing toward the back office, as if hoping someone else would step in and take control. Daniel Rhodes stood beside him, posture still composed, but his eyes had begun to dart toward the guests, toward the staff, toward the security cameras mounted discreetly in the corners of the ceiling. The cameras. She followed his gaze and smiled. Faintly. "You're thinking about footage," she said. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're wondering what was recorded," she continued. "Who said what? Who stood where?" The manager stiffened. "That's good," she added. "Because so am I." Daniel cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, with respect, this is becoming public?" She asked gently. "Yes," he admitted. "Good," she replied. A murmur moved through the lobby again. Phones were no longer hidden. People weren't pretending not to watch anymore. This wasn't awkward curiosity now, it was attention. The kind institutions fear most. She turned slightly, addressing the room without raising her voice. "I want to explain something," she said. "Not as an executive, not as an owner, but as a person who has been on both sides of this desk." She gestured toward the front counter. "For years I studied systems like this one," she continued. "Not just how they succeed, but how they fail people quietly." She glanced at the young employee who stood frozen behind the desk. "Failure doesn't always look like cruelty," she said. "Sometimes it looks like procedure, like tone, like who gets the benefit of the doubt." Daniel interjected carefully. "We acknowledge that improvements are always—" She turned to him. "Daniel, how many complaints has this location logged in the last 18 months?" He hesitated. I don't have that number on hand. She nodded. You should. The manager's eyes widened. Because I do. She reached into her bag again, slower this time, and removed a thin tablet. She tapped the screen once, then held it up, not for them, but for the cameras. This hotel, she said calmly, has the highest guest dispute rate in the region, second highest staff turnover, and more unresolved misunderstandings than any other Aurelius property. Daniel's composure slipped. Those metrics are contextual, they're patterned, she corrected, and patterns tell stories. She turned the tablet toward him now. I asked for transparency earlier, she said. This is what it looks like. The manager took an involuntary step back. You see, she continued, I didn't come here tonight by accident. I came because this hotel was flagged. The lobby stilled completely. Daniel stared at her. Flagged? How? By our internal equity audit, she replied. The words landed with precision. The manager's face drained of color. Audit? She nodded. Quiet one, ongoing, designed to observe real behavior, not rehearse compliance. She looked directly at him now. Do you know why I didn't announce myself? She asked. He swallowed. No. Because systems behave differently when they think they're being watched, she said. I wanted to see how this one behaved when it thought it wasn't. The realization hit him like a slow wave. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't coincidence. This was exposure. The young employee's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel's voice dropped. You tested us, I observed, she corrected. You revealed. A guest near the elevators whispered, Oh my God. She turned back to the room. This wasn't about catching one person making a mistake, she said. It was about understanding how power moves when it feels unquestioned. She looked at the manager again. And tonight, she continued, you showed me exactly how. His voice cracked. I didn't know. That, she said softly, is the problem. She took a step closer, not invading his space, but closing the emotional distance. You didn't know who I was, she said, so you treated me like I didn't matter. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel spoke again, careful, measured. If this is part of an audit, he said, then surely there's a protocol for handling the findings. There is, she agreed, and that protocol, he hesitated, choosing his words, typically remains confidential. She smiled. That's the old protocol, she said. His eyes narrowed. And the new one? She turned slowly, deliberately, and faced the cameras again. The new one, she said, acknowledges that secrecy protects institutions, not people. The manager shook his head faintly. You can't. I can, she said, and I will. Her phone vibrated again. She looked down. Board chair. This is escalating. We need to control the narrative, she exhaled slowly. There it is, she typed back. Her. The narrative has already been written. I'm just letting people read it. She slipped the phone away. Daniel's voice tightened. If this becomes public, the fallout will be uncomfortable, she finished. Yes, he looked around the lobby, at the guests, at the staff, at the quiet intensity hanging in the air. But necessary, she added. She turned to the young employee. What's your name? She asked gently. The employee startled. Lena, she said. Lena Morales. Lena, she said. Why did you speak up earlier? Lena hesitated, eyes filling. Because I recognized you. And because I've seen this happen. Before. Seen what? She asked. Lena's voice trembled. Guests being questioned, doubted, moved aside, and when they complain, nothing changes? The manager closed his eyes. Thank you, she said. She turned back to Daniel. This is the cost of silence, she said. It doesn't stay quiet, it accumulates. Daniel rubbed his temples. What do you want to happen now? The question echoed. She didn't answer immediately. She looked around the lobby one more time, at the people who had been watching, at the people who had been invisible. Then she spoke. I want accountability, she said. Not a press release, not a quiet transfer. The manager looked up sharply. I want this location placed under immediate review, she continued. Leadership suspended pending findings. Daniel's eyes widened. That's, within my authority, she said calmly. The manager's breath came shallow now. Suspended? She met his eyes. Temporarily, she said, so we can see how the system responds without you steering it. He looked like he might argue, then he... DIDN single quotes D. Daniel straightened. If we do this publicly, he said, it will set a precedent. Yes, she replied, that's the point. A guest near the bar whispered, she's serious. Daniel nodded slowly. I'll need confirmation from the board. She smiled faintly. They're watching. He followed her gaze too. The cameras again. The truth had fully surfaced now, and there was no putting it back. The manager spoke quietly, almost to himself. All of this because of one reservation. She looked at him. No, she said, because of how you treated a human being. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Heavier. Final. Daniel single quotes S phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His face tightened. The board wants to convene an emergency session, he said. Immediately, she nodded. Good, he hesitated. They want you present. She took a breath. Then she said something that made the manager's head snap. I won't be attending privately, she said. If they want to speak to me, she glanced around the lobby, they can do it where this started. Daniel stared at her. You're asking them to face the consequences in real time. She finished. The elevator chimed again. Somewhere above them, executives were scrambling. Statements were being drafted. Careers were hanging in balance. And in the center of it all, she stood calm, grounded, unyielding. The system had been exposed. Now came the question that mattered most. What would it do next? The board appeared on the lobby's largest screen. Not a dramatic entrance. No. Fanfare. Just a clean switch from hotel branding to a grid of faces, each framed by office lighting and carefully neutral expressions. Men and women who governed decisions from a distance. People used to being insulated by layers of protocol. The guests fell silent. So did the staff. Daniel Rhodes stepped slightly to the side, suddenly aware that his role had shifted from mediator to witness. The woman stood centered beneath the screen, hands folded loosely, posture relaxed. Good evening, she said. The board chair cleared her throat. This is highly irregular. Yes, the woman replied. So was tonight. A pause. The board chair leaned forward. We understand there was an incident. The word landed exactly as she expected. An incident. She nodded. There was. And we're prepared to address it through appropriate channels, the chair continued, privately. The woman looked around the lobby, at the staff standing shoulder to shoulder, at the guests who hadn't left, at Lena gripping the edge of the desk with white knuckles. No, she said. Not privately. A murmur moved through the room. The chair's lips tightened. This kind of discussion is exactly the kind that never happens in public, the woman finished calmly. And that's why patterns repeat. She took a breath. When I walked into this hotel tonight, she said, I was treated as suspicious. My proof was dismissed. My presence questioned. Not because of policy, but because of perception. She looked up at the screen, and everyone here saw it. The board members exchanged glances. The chair adjusted her glasses. We don't dispute your experience. That's not enough, the woman said. The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. What matters, she continued, is what the system does after the experience. Daniel shifted his weight. The chair nodded slowly. We've reviewed preliminary reports. Good, the woman said. Then you know this wasn't isolated. Silence. The chair exhaled. We're recommending immediate administrative leave for local leadership pending a full investigation. The manager's shoulders sagged, not in surprise but in recognition. She nodded. That's a start, the chair hesitated. There will also be a review of training protocols. Training doesn't fix incentives, the woman replied. Another pause. What I want, she continued, is structural accountability, transparent reporting, independent review, and protection. For employees who speak up? Her eyes moved to Lena, especially them. The chair's gaze followed. We can commit to an independent audit, the chair said carefully, and to publishing the findings. A ripple moved through the lobby. Publish, the woman repeated. Not summarize. Yes, the chair Sod. Publish. The woman nodded once. Then there's one more thing, she said. The chair braced. Go on. I want this hotel to remain open during the review, she said. No quiet closures, no rebranding. Daniel looked up sharply. This place doesn't need a reset, she continued. It needs a mirror. The chair considered. This, agreed, she said finally. A breath moved through the lobby relief. Mixed with disbelief, the woman felt something loosen in her chest. Not victory. Release. The chair straightened. We'll issue a statement within the hour. The woman shook her head. No statement. The chair frowned. Excuse me? No spin, she clarified. No corporate language, just facts. The chair held her gaze. Then nodded. Facts. The screen went dark. Not with applause. With quiet. The manager stood very still. I understand, he said quietly. I'll cooperate fully. She looked at him. I believe you, she said. And I also believe this moment is bigger than you. He nodded, eyes lowered. She turned to Daniel. Ensure the process is followed, she said. Yes, he replied. I will. Then she turned to the staff. To everyone who works here, she said, her voice warm now, I want you to hear this clearly. She paused. This is not a purge. This is not punishment for its own sake. She met their eyes one by one. This is an invitation to do better with protection. Lena's shoulders shook. Tears ran freely now. Lena, the woman said gently. Yes? Lena whispered. Thank you, she said. The word landed with weight. Lena nodded. Unable to speak. The woman looked around the lobby one last time. I'll be staying tonight, she said. Not as an owner, a beat, as a guest. A small stunned laugh broke out somewhere near the elevators. She smiled faintly. Let's try that again, she said, turning to the front desk. The clerk, hands trembling, straightened. Welcome, he said, voice careful, sincere. May I have your name, ma'am? She gave it. He typed, paused. Then smiled, really smiled. Yes, he said. We have you. She nodded. I know. A key card slid across the counter. She took it. As she turned toward the elevators. The lobby didn't erupt. It didn't need to. People watched her walk away, not with suspicion, not with awe, but with understanding, because they had seen something. Rare. Not anger, overpowering injustice, but calm dismantling it. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside alone. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Tired. Steady. Still standing. The elevator rose smoothly. Above. A system recal, IBRA below. A lobby returned to motion, changed in ways that wouldn't show up on brochures, but would echo in decisions. Yet to be made, and for the first time that night, she allowed herself a quiet exhale. Justice hadn't shouted. It hadn't struck. It had spoken, and this time, the system had listened.